Hello, everybody. It's the waitingfornextyear.com podcast. I'm your host, Craig Lindell, and this is a Driving with Craig edition because I just really want to talk about Andrew Luck and all the things that have gone on surrounding that gigantic news story that broke this weekend, because I am a Browns fan who is married to a Colts fan. That is who I am. That's who I've been since 2006. So I don't have a second team. I don't root for the Colts, but I've watched them a whole lot over the better part of the last 15 years. So when Andrew Luck, the news broke, it was shocking. And the way that it broke in the middle of a game basically on Twitter because somebody leaked it to Andrew Schefter. You want to talk about a guy with sources. Does he ever miss a story? It's just absolutely insane. But there's so much going on. Like, number one, Andrew Luck doesn't owe anybody anything. If he wants to retire with what he's been through physically as a player, I don't think anybody can question his motivation, his heart, his work ethic. I think he deserves to do what he wants to do. The timing, you don't get to control the timing as a player. Your body reacts how it's going to react. I always couch these kinds of statements because I would never compare myself to a professional athlete with the things that I've been through. But I mean, much like a professional athlete, I've had 2 ACL surgeries. I've had a disc replaced in my neck. As I sit here talking to you today, I'm scheduled for an epidural steroid shot into my neck, because I've been dealing with a bulging disc or herniated disc in my neck that has given me nerve pain since late June. So like, I'm not comparing myself to Andrew Luck. I'm just saying I've been through the rehab and the pain cycle on these kinds of sports injuries a number of times in my life, rivaling some professional athletes. I obviously didn't have to get back to compete in a professional sports league, but I get it. I think that I've got a perspective that actually actually makes sense here. And you do just get tired of rehabbing. I rehabbed ACLs in back-to-back years, and it's no wonder that after the second one, after I tore my second ACL and spent the 7 or 8 months coming back from that it's no wonder that I just quit. You know, I quit playing sports. That's when I ballooned up to 215, 220 pounds, when I'd always been kind of 170, 180 as a kid in high school. And towards the end of high school, I ballooned up to 200, then 210. And that's where I remained until 2010 when I started getting myself in shape. But it's depressing. And I was on opioids because of the pain in my knees and everything else. And so if Andrew Luck wants to quit, if he's done with it after dealing with a shoulder injury and a lacerated spleen, if he's just had it, who's to blame? Who's to question him? I don't think anybody has any standing to complain about it. So that's fine. No issues here. What played out on Saturday night was just really unfortunate and totally unfair for everybody. Andrew Luck had kind of told the Colts what he was planning on doing, and he planned on telling his teammates after the game on Saturday. And then he was going to have a press conference on Sunday, and he never got a chance to make it to that press conference because the news leaked in the middle of the preseason game with him standing on the sidelines. And then by the time the game ended, the news was everywhere. The cameras, it was a feeding frenzy with the cameras following him off the field. And some Colts fans, the majority of Colts fans, I don't know, they booed. And I'm not saying that it's okay to boo or that that's the right reaction. What I'm saying is that reaction with those circumstances, how they unfolded in Indianapolis, with him being on the field and that game going on and the shock of that announcement, I think that would happen in any NFL city, every NFL city, Boston, Philly, Cleveland, Detroit, every single NFL city. And that's not to say that it's okay. It's just the idea that that's the Colts fan rational response to this piece of news, and the condemnation of Colts fans by media members all over the country right now is ludicrous. Ludicrous. That wasn't a rational thought by fans to sit there and boo Andrew Luck. They don't hate Andrew Luck any more than Cleveland Browns fans wanted Tim Couch to get hurt when they cheered as he was replaced by Kelly Holcomb. Browns fans were frustrated, they were tired, they were drunk, and they saw Tim Couch go down, and the excitement of switching quarterbacks, they wanted to switch quarterbacks, and the excitement of the moment, yeah, I'm sure there were some who were cheering the injury, and that's despicable. But that didn't define the Cleveland Browns fan base or their relationship to Tim Couch. Not long term, not even short term. And what happened between Colts fans and Andrew Luck on Saturday night in that weird circumstance is not emblematic of Colts fans or their relationship to Andrew Luck, short term or long term. And anybody who's out there painting it as such is just kind of wrong. Almost as wrong as it is to boo Andrew Luck off the field during that game. Now, I will say I have a little more understanding for current and former NFL players and their reaction to that, because they identify with Andrew Luck. They identify with the situation and what he's going through and rehabbing his injuries and trying to play through pain, because the NFL is a league where everybody plays through pain. And if anybody understands what Andrew Luck is going through, it's his fellow and recently retired players. So I understand them reacting poorly to the fans booing. That's their perspective, and I understand that perspective. But some of these people who are shaming and hand-slapping Colts fans today, it's, I know it's a political thing, but the whole virtue signaling, this idea that Browns fans wouldn't have reacted the same way, or that Eagles fans or any other NFL fan base wouldn't have acted the same way in that weird moment, in the heat of that weird moment, that really bugs me. And I know I won't solve anything, and I'm mostly talking about people trying to show how much character they have with their tweets, looking for the perfect tweet, and pretty much I should probably just log off Twitter. But I know it's going to enter the mainstream media cycle this week, because we are, everybody had a chance to react, and now all those guys who were off all weekend are jumping on the radio, and they're penning their columns. And it's going to be a lot of, well, look at how moral I am versus how immoral Colts fans are. It's a bunch of garbage. It's absolutely a bunch of garbage. Colts fans aren't any better or worse. I mean, maybe on the fringes or on the margins, they're no better or worse than any other NFL fans. And if you think that Patriots fans would have had the wherewithal to give Andrew Luck a standing ovation instead of reacting negatively after being shocked by a Twitter report in the middle of a preseason game, before they had a chance to hear anything, before Andrew Luck had a chance to address it, or the franchise had a chance to address it, if you think that anybody would have reacted well, you're crazy. You're just absolutely crazy. So I'm probably going on too long, but that's it drove me nuts this weekend. It drove me crazy. We're going to see a lot more of this. This is the money is so big in professional sports now, especially at positions like quarterback. We're going to see more of this. I don't really want to get into speculation on whether or not we've seen the last of Andrew Luck. I mean, he's free, just like he's free to retire because of where his head is right now. If he takes a year or 18 months off and his head all of a sudden says, you know what, I want to see if I can get the love back, if I can get the love of football back, and he's ready to jump out there and try again, I don't blame him. I mean, I've been making all these deals with myself. And again, I'm not comparing myself to a pro athlete, but as I've been dealing with this nerve pain, I wake up every morning with massive shoulder pain. You know, on the scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is the worst pain, my shoulder is like a 7. Somewhere between a 7 and an 8 every single morning when I wake up because of what's been going on with my neck. And that leads me to make a bunch of make deals with myself, and not deals that I can actually make. You know, I'm not entitled to do it, but I'm trying anyway. All right, well, you know, I'll never ski again if I could just get back to running. I'll never play soccer again if I can just get back to running. Or what if I give up skiing? Can I run and play soccer still? And I'm 40, and I'm not even particularly good at any of my sports anymore. But it just goes to show, like, the weird headspace you get in when you deal with these injuries. And Andrew Luck obviously is in a weird headspace that led him to retire from one of the things that he was better than anybody else in the world at. One of the things that he was better than 99% of the world at. And so if he wants to come back and he finds it in himself to make that decision at some point, fine. But to sit there and say, yeah, I bet he finds his, I bet he ends, I bet we haven't seen the last of Andrew Luck. Based on what? Based on what? Unless you're one of his, like, friends or confidants and you've known him for 10 years. I don't know how anybody says stuff like that. I just don't. I mean, you can make a bet, but you're just making a bet. You're guessing, you have no idea. So, if he decides to, cool. Just like he decided to retire, you know, it's tough. I feel sorry for Colts fans, but, you know, who am I? Who am I to wag my finger at anybody? But I think we're going to see a lot more of these. We're going to see guys who are smart with their money. They sock away over half, after taxes and everything else, they sock away their money so that they can make these kinds of decisions, so that they have the freedom to choose a less physically impaired life after football. I really think that we're going to see a lot more of these, and it's just it seems catastrophic or horrible or awful for fans, but, you know, we'll deal with it. NFL fans or NFL teams and regimes will get good at dealing with it. They'll start hedging. They'll keep more quarterbacks. They'll keep more at every position. And that's just going to be how it's going to go. Maybe they'll finally expand rosters in the NFL and more guys will get paid. Obviously, not the tens of millions of dollars as the top guys, but maybe they'll keep more guys on the roster. There'll be more of that lower middle class of an NFL roster, which would be good. It would be good for the whole league. I mean, I'm not sure what the NFL minimums are now, but it wouldn't be a bad thing to have another 5 players per roster making somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000 a year. That's great money for a guy who maybe doesn't have to play on Sundays to see if they can make their dreams come true or find an opportunity. Some of these guys, if they could just hang around, would end up getting opportunities to cash in. And I think the league, with the health concerns around the players and the brutality of the sport, I think they need to expand those rosters. It'll help the overall health of the league, which is kind of funny to say that because technically expanding rosters puts more people in harm's way, I guess. But it should reduce the load or help reduce the load. The other thing the NFL needs to think about, and I know this is like getting in the weeds of the NFL. So you've got a roster and then you've got active on game day. Now, I don't understand why the active roster needs to be less than the NFL roster. Like why I don't know if it's still 53 and then 47, so like 6 guys are inactive on Sunday. I don't know if those numbers are correct, but why do we have any inactives? I understand the practice squad should be inactive, but if they're on the roster, why do you have game day inactives? Again, not the biggest deal in the world, but why? None of it makes any sense to me. So anyway, I guess that's it. I kind of closed with a whimper on the Andrew Luck stuff. I blew the load early on that take, but that's how these things go. It's how these things go. So I'm interested in your perspective. I try not to argue with anybody on Twitter. I did get into a conversation with TD about the Andrew Luck thing and the Colts fans, and he had more of a zero tolerance policy for those fans. It'd be fun to talk to him about it at some point. Maybe we will. Maybe it'll be dead news by the time I get a chance. The Dairy Brothers will have a tribe cast this week. I think it's a little bit late, but no biggie. Those guys are doing maybe the best tribe podcast on the entire internet this season. So I know you guys are loving it. I know I'm loving it. They're keeping me up to date with the Indians in a way that I wouldn't otherwise be keeping up to date with the Indians. So it's awesome. And no two better hosts to do that than the Dairy Brothers. So thanks for listening. Make sure you also subscribe to the other Waiting for Next Year podcast network podcasts. We've got Andy and Jared, Cleveland and Beyond. They were mentioned on the Ringer for Cleveland Week. I hope you saw that. I hope you've subscribed to that podcast. It's a good one. And Tom and Travis doing the Nail in the Coffin, the Nail podcast. You can find that on the pages of Waiting for Next Year. You should definitely go and subscribe to it. If you're in Overcast, if you're in Overcast, star it. Give those guys a review in addition. I love those podcasts. I love that they're associated with Waiting for Next Year. So we got to show them the love. Show them the love. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time. It's been the waitingfornextyear.com podcast.